Hello Internet, AdoptedMike here, and in this video I'm going to be doing a build with the CoolerMaster Elite 110 case. That's a Mini-ITX case. So we're going to be putting the Gigabyte motherboard there, the F2A88XN-WIFI board. We're also going to be using an Hitachi 2GB hard drive, 3.5-inch hard drive, with a 120GB Kingston SSD holding the operating system. We're going to be using the AMD Athlon X4 750K processor in that board, and I'll also have 8GB of team memory. There's Zeus overclocking RAM. That's a 1600 megahertz RAM, and that is 8 gigs in total. We're also going to be using an H55 to cool the CPU, and a Corsair CX430M for pumping out the power. So anyway, oh wow, I almost forgot. In the back there we have the MSI, the Mini-ITX Gaming GTX 760. Gosh, how did I forget that? That is definitely going to be the highlight of the build here for sure, as far as pushing this into the gaming territory. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and get started by stripping down the case. Here we go, we've got the case all stripped down. Not much to it when we pull it all apart. We've got the fan. Here's a mounting point for some of the hard drive or the storage. Got the bag that comes with it, some extra screws as I took everything apart. Got the front panel, and back there we have the top panel. So it comes apart pretty easily, and now we're going to go ahead and start putting stuff in and filling it up. So here is the start. I've got the motherboard, CPU, and RAM installed. I've got the H50 installed as well too. Got that put in the front of the case, and you can fit a 140 in the front there, but not a 140 millimeter radiator, as you can see here. If the radiator were to get bigger, it appears that we would start hitting the RAM, especially if it was taller RAM. Maybe if it was a low profile, but I don't know that I would try it. I think I would just stick with the 120 all-in-one cooler if you're going to go with an all-in-one cooler on this case. Okay, so now I've got the motherboard installed in the case. Got the CPU and the RAM installed, as well as the H50, as you can see. Take a quick run around it. And then I will continue on. One thing that is on my mind right now is the ability of these tubes to flex out of the way for the power supply. I mean it looks like I'm not going to have any issues there, but definitely when I'm going to put that power supply in next and see, because what I can tell, I wonder if the tubes there are going to be a problem, and I may have to mount that differently. So for sure I'm going to have to do something different here with those coolant hoses, because it just isn't quite gonna make it there. So anyway, we'll have to probably reroute it to the other side. So then, routing the tubes the other way, I can get them in between the GPU and the power supply here. However, the tubes are definitely touching the back side of the graphics card, and that's probably not a big deal for this card because it has a backplate, so it's a smooth surface and you wouldn't have to worry about any kind of vibrations eventually, one of the chips on the back or something rubbing through and causing a leak. With that backplate, it should keep that from happening. I'd rather it not be there, but there really isn't much other choice for this H50 in this case, assuming I wanted to keep the H50 in here, and I do, because basically what we have here, I mean, it's 120 millimeters, but you have these ends here where for the radiator that make it more than 120 this way, sideways. So if I mount it up and down, it doesn't quite make it because of RAM clearances, whether the tubes are on the top or on the bottom. And when they're off the top, then it's a funny angle to get them past the power supply and then up into here. Plus then it gets really tight up top, and then with the top mounting plate having the hard drive and SSD, then the tubes will be in the way of that. So it's really kind of difficult to get the H50 in here, but I was able to get everything working. But just keep that in mind. If you're going with the same configuration I am, you need to make sure you might have a backplate, just for longevity reasons anyway. We don't need that, obviously we don't need a hole to get punctured in the tubing. And now we're going to move on to the hard drive and SSD installation. So as you can see here, I've installed both of them to this top little bracket. Now it should be noted that they can be installed also too on this side there as well, but I didn't really want to mess with the airflow to the GPU that much, so I went ahead and opted not to put a drive there. Plus I'm hoping also too that the cable management will be just a little bit easier to to manage on the top. So anyway, that's how we got that there. You can see we got the ends poking out, so now we screw that down there, and then we'll go on to the cable end. And now we can see that I've got the power and data cables hooked up to both drives, and everything is tightened down. And at this point the build is pretty much done. Obviously I've got to put the cover back on over there, but other than that, like, we'll take a look here at the side. You can see yeah, cable management, right? But in a small case we really can't expect a whole hell of a lot of cable management to be possible. I mean, this thing is one of the smallest cases that I've ever worked with, and other than perhaps getting a power supply and then getting custom cables for it, and then perhaps, like for example this 24 pin, how it goes this way, this way, this way, and then down. Maybe you can find one where you can get a custom cable length from here straight down. Same with the 4-pin CPU. So stuff like that, yeah, that can be done, and it would raise the cost a little bit. But where I have everything off to the side here, I don't feel like I'm going to really hurt any kind of airflow. Not that there really is much in this case anyway. But primarily my reasoning for putting all of the cables on this side is because of the GPU on the other side, which will spin around here real quick, and I'll show you again, like I talked about earlier with the hard drive mounting. I wanted to keep that open as much as possible to allow it to breathe the best. Obviously this side panel here is kind of weird because it has the drive mounts, but it is vented on the actual case itself, so that'll allow the GPU to breathe very well. There's a lot of room up here, there's some room behind here, there's a lot of room in between this side panel and the fan. So and typically in my experience the GPU is always one of the hotter running pieces anyway, so this gives it a lot of room to breathe. The CPU, obviously being water cooled, will fare pretty well. And now I'm gonna go ahead and I'll wrap it up and tell you my final thoughts. So in conclusion, I really think this is a neat case. It does have some shortcomings though, as far as what you can put in it and working with it. However, it is extremely portable when it's all done, just because of its size. The only thing that would make this more portable is if there was some kind of integrated handle, but that would be one thing that could be improved on, I suppose, if you were going to take this to LAN parties. You know, cable management for an ITX system, there's, especially this small, I mean, you really can't do a lot other than maybe a different power supply, all modular, and then some custom cables. If you were to make some custom cables, heck of a lot of work, but then you could get that 24 pin smaller, and that's really the biggest cable to deal with. I mean, the 4+4 obviously as well too, but the biggest one to work around is this 24 pin. That's always a pain in the ass. But anyway, you know, that's not too bad. One thing to point out too, the way I built it, I've got that hard drive on that top. It's really close to the power supply, and it I was going to do this anyway, put the fan on the bottom just to kind of keep this area down here ventilated well, so that way the power supply is always drawing air up and pushing it out. So it really didn't matter that the hard drive was over here. However, if you did want to mount the power supply the other way, then I would recommend not putting a hard drive on this side and instead putting it perhaps where I have the SSD here, so at least that way it would clear the fan of the power supply, because right now the way it sits, the hard drive would definitely suffocate the power supply, just not enough room for it to breathe. Or I suppose a hard drive could be mounted on the side. I chose not to do this because I wanted that graphics card to breathe a little better. Small case and a GTX 760, and a GTX 760 is not the most powerful card, but it is still pretty powerful, and it fit in this case, and at the time of recording it was one of the most powerful cards I could actually get in this case, and I don't want it to overheat. I don't want it to heat up the hard drive, so that's good the hard drive is over that way, and all this open area will just give it some room to to have some air, so it doesn't suffocate itself or overheat itself. So that was the idea behind that. Yeah, so basically this is a pretty cool little case. I guess for me, I probably would have gone with something a little bigger. I do like I'm always been a fan of like the Prodigy ITX version. I didn't really care for the Micro ATX version, but the Prodigy ITX was great. I also like the Corsair 250D. I liked that one as well too. A little bigger than this case, but kind of the same idea going on. But yeah, you can definitely pack quite a bit of shit in this case, and it ends up being a pretty powerful computer for the size. So anyway, that wraps up my build with the CoolerMaster Elite 110. If you liked the video, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. If you didn't, give me the thumbs down. And in the comment section below, just let me know what you think about this case. Would you guys use it? What do you think of the build I did? I'm sure there's some comments that can be left on things that I could have done better. Go ahead and let me know. Different configurations possibly. But anyway, yeah, that wraps it all up. And as always, thank you for watching.